Haversat with Azorius Delver. He's 11-2. Jonathan Castagna on your right with a Rakdos Reanimator. Now, Azorius Delver here on the left side has Source of Plowshares in their deck, which is quite good against Rakdos Reanimator, wouldn't you say?
I would certainly say that, though the Rakdos Reanimator play is on the play. This is a Rakdos deck that is a Bayou. There's some green cards in the sideboard, but the main deck's all red and black. Yeah. Jacob Haversat is a player who had a feature match yesterday in round 6. He did lose to Rudy Brixa, though the rest of his tournament has been going quite a lot better. You see him at 11-2 here. There was a Chancellor of the Annex at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and Castagna actually got that Chancellor of the Annex revealed, so if Haversat has a response here, it's going to need to be a free spell like Force of Will, and then he's going to have to pay the one for the Chancellor. Now, Jonathan Castagna, I'm sure he's played this deck quite a bit. Most players who play Legacy are familiar with their archetype by a lot. This Flusterstorm, however, from the main deck is particularly brutal because it fights through that Chancellor of the Annex triggered ability. And you have to think, maybe Jonathan Castagna should have main phased that Entomb.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. That is usually the one that will invoke the counter war in this matchup, right? You want to fight over the Entomb rather than the Reanimator spell?
Right, and since you revealed the Chancellor of the Annex on the first turn, it takes 2 copies of Force of Will to fight through that, whereas here, all it took was 1 copy of Flusterstorm, and Castagna's got to be feeling that.
Yeah, Castagna just has Verdant Catacombs and a pass on the second turn. No attempts just yet at a second combo.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Castagna, he actually mulliganed to 5 in this game. And he actually had the potential for a turn 2 combo. Of course, if that Exhume had been fired off after a resolved Entomb, it would have gotten hit by that Flusterstorm for sure. But in this stage, you have to take every small edge you can get. On the mulligan to 5, you got to get something going.
Yeah, and Haversat's going to go to work here with the Ponder. See if he can get some kind of threat online. One thing that is generally true, the Delver deck does have to apply pressure to win these matchups. If nothing happens long enough, Castagna hits way harder when he comes online.
Oh, absolutely. And once something like a Gristlebrand enters the battlefield, even if you have an answer for it in the form of Swords to Plowshares, you just get absolutely destroyed sometimes by the draw 7.
And here is a threat, though. Haversat, basic island into Delver of Secrets. Go back Castagna's way. He'll crack that Verdant Catacombs to 19.
The shields are kind of down here for Haversat. If he doesn't have access to a Force of Will, then, he might be in a little trouble if Castagna can piece together something like Faithless Looting into Reanimate or Entomb here at the end of turn.
So Badlands is found. There's a Dark Ritual at the front of the hand. Ooh, draw is Entomb. He'll start with the Dark Ritual.
One. Starts with the Dark Ritual. Now Haversat has to make a decision. Do you try to fight over this? Castagna casts Entomb off the 3-mana floating down to 2. My guess, looking for a Gristlebrand. And then he's going to follow that up with an Exhume and try to put that onto the battlefield. Now sometimes there are creatures that you want to get with Entomb instead of Gristlebrand that are particularly good in a specific matchup. But Rakdos, whoa.
Yeah, Sire of Insanity is the card put into the graveyard here.
Bold move, Cotton. I love it.
Okay, once you have that one on the table, Haversat, well, if he already had the swords, it would be discarded. Each player discards their cards at the end of at the beginning of every end step.
Right, and thanks to that Dark Ritual, Castagna can actually play around Daze here. And if Jacob Haversat doesn't have Force Will or double Daze, that Siren Santa hits the battlefield and their hands are going away.
Yeah, that's Exhume.
That's how you make up for a mulligan to 5.
Yeah,
Ryan.
No kidding. How would I mind twist you?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, Force Will reveal the Delver. It increases the damage output. Here's an attack for 3. That card doesn't do anything. Castagna to 16.
Yeah, because it's getting discarded before he ever has a chance to use it.
Yeah, exactly. Go Castagna's way. Did he draw another Reanimate
He did,
spell?
and he has a Chancellor of the Annex as well.
Yeah, that Annex was discarded to the Sire. That'll come across for 6. Haversat to 13. Reanimate on the Chancellor.
Takes a huge chunk of damage, but adds another giant threat to his side of the battlefield and one that taxes the mana from Haversat. If he draws a Ponder or Brainstorm, it's going to use all his mana for the turn. He needs to draw Swords of Plowshares right now.
Yeah, and the Chancellor also flies. It just jumps in front of the Chancellor. Or the Delver, rather. His Brainstorm, that's going to cost 2. The Chancellor forces all your spells to cost +1 here.
Not to nitpick, I believe it is a trigger, and I believe if Jonathan doesn't say anything, that means that it's a missed trigger. So Jacob did tap 1, and then Castagna said trigger, and then he paid the additional 1.
Sure. Yeah, it counters your spell if you don't. It's a trigger that does that.
Correct.
Yeah, Haversat doesn't have it. That Siren Sanity into that Chancellor, that's way too much for Delver.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Jacob, the missed sequence early on by Castagna goes unpunished, and that Siren Sanity just completely destroyed him on the third turn.
Yeah, and that's just the strength of decks like Reanimator. They just hit so hard with such a small number of cards.
Yeah,
Haversat had some pressure, not enough disruption, though. You do need a good mix of that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and look at the sideboards here, see what he might have to help him out in these post-sideboard games. For Haversat, he has 2 Disenchant, a Teferi Hero of Dominaria, a Containment Priest, a Supreme Verdict, a Rest in Peace, a Surgical Extraction, a Path to Exile, a Vendilion Click, a Counterbalance,
nice.
an Engineered Explosives, a Meddling Mage, a Back to Basics, a Hydro Blast, a Caracas.
Yeah, thanks, man.
That's a lot of one-ups.
Jacob Haversat, appreciate it. You're come on.
It's a strenuous deck to register.
All right, I'm not sure why it's not 1 Disenchant and 1 Seal of Cleansing.
Right.
Okay, come on. All right, so from Haversat's side, you want anything that interacts with the graveyard and most things that interact with creatures. He has some really good ones here. Caracas is particularly good against the Gristlebrands that Castagna can deploy, but for the most part, the Rakdos Reanimator deck, this version plays a bunch of Chancellor of the Annex, and you saw Siren of Insanity. These creatures don't get hit by Caracas, so even though it's still effective, it's not as effective as it could be. The Hydroblast, I think, is probably a miss here. It does hit Faithless Looting and Siren Sanity, but that is it. Back to basics, they can operate on such a small amount of mana, and they have Dark Ritual. I don't think you want that here. Meddling Mage could be okay, but at basically just naming Entomb. But the Rakdos Reanimator deck can go either way on they have multiple iterations of cards from either side of the combo with different names. So Meddling Mage is never going to lock them out completely. Counterbalance, I think, is pretty good. If you just blind flip on a 1, sometimes you win the game. Click is a way to apply some more pressure and is an instant speed. I like that. Path to Exile is a maybe. If you want to Fifth Swords of Plowshare, sure. The Surgical Extraction, the Rest in Peace, these are 100% coming in. The Containment Priest, 100% coming in. And that's it.
Yeah, good mix of stuff in that list of 1-0s for this matchup. Castagna got 4 Reverence Silence, 3 Pack Rat, 2 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Collective Brutality, 2 Magus of the Moon, and Elish Norn in the sideboard. That one is a unique effect that's not in the main deck, and an Iona Shield of Emeria, so 2 different kind of Reanimator threats you can go for here. What do you like in his board?
So, cards like Elish Norn and Iona Shield of Emeria, these are cards you want to bring in against matchups that A, won't have a lot of graveyard hate, and B, these cards are knockouts. When I said last game when he's casting Entomb, he may want to go find one of those haymakers that are not Gristlebrand. In that instance, he had Siren of Insanity. But out of the sideboard, these are not cards you want in this particular matchup. But Iona, very good against things like Storm or even, Mono Red Prison, whereas Elish Norn straight up beats decks like Elves and even Death and Taxes sometimes. Magus of the Moon, I don't think you want that here. Collective Brutality, I don't think you want that here either. I don't know. There's a few options. There's 4 Reverent Silence and 3 Pack Rats, right? So that's like an option. You can have Reverent Silence as a way to destroy those Rest in Pieces, but there's only one, and you can have a Pack Rat as an alternate win condition, but that's kind of bad against Stoneforge Mystics. So I'm not sure. I think Castagna might actually be a little bit backed into a corner, and especially so if the Delver deck is able to deploy something like Rest in Peace early in the game.
So we are in the month of March now, which means it's time for the March promotion here at our creature collection. That's going to be Veni, Vidi, Armadici. I came, I saw, I armadilloed.
Yeah, and the full art on this is actually pretty sweet. We'll show that a little later. That's the playmat we're going to use for, I want to say, there it is. The creature collection playmat, sleeves, and player bundles. You can get that at go.starttogames.com/creature collection. As you can see, the full art is spectacular. Rode up on the beach, conquered, just classic colonial.
That is a triumphant armadillo.
Oh, yeah. All right, looks like both players are about ready here to start game 2.
Haversat looking at a 6-card hand at this point, I believe.
Yeah, and if he's kept, I'm curious if we're going to have a Chancellor of the Annex reveal, and it looks like we do not.
Delver of Secrets turn 1 for Haversat, so pressure's online. Does he have Disruption? Does Castagna have a combo set up? On 7 cards, you got to figure he has something pretty good.
Yeah, and from my personal experience, I play a lot with this Rakdos Reanimator deck in Legacy, and it has some of the most degenerate starts possible. Turn 1 Dark Ritual into some sort of combo, maybe even discard into combo, and then if it's a Gristlebrand that you're comboing into, that allows you to whoa, what is happening? Oh,
so there's some shortcutting happening here.
Okay.
Yeah, Verdant Catacombs, Lotus Petal, Fetch Up Swamp, Thoughtseize. There was only one spell in Haversat's hand. Looks like Island Plains, Flooded Strand, and Source of Plowshares hitting the bin.
Yeah, so games tend to slow down, though, after sideboard, was my point. And even though Castagna might have a potential turn 1 combo, if he has that discard spell and not quite enough mana, he can actually choose to slow it down a bit, use his discard effect first. And here, even though that Force of Will is about to be drawn by Haversat, the shields are down. He has 3 lands in hand, as well as that Force of Will on that mulligan to 6, and that Thoughtseize hitting him.
Yeah, so here's an attack for 3. Castagna will fall to 14. That Thoughtseize is also doing some damage here. But Castagna's he's just playing against an opponent that's face up. That Force of Will has no blue card to pair. Rest of the hand is lands. He's pretty well greenlit for a combo if he has something here.
Yeah, and it looks like he's got Faithless Looting. He's probably going to crack the Lotus Petal to cast that. And if he has a creature to discard, and it looks like he has an Exhume, so he might need another mana. He also has an Entomb. So as long as he's got mana to work with, he's got it wrapped up.
Entomb is where he will start. Taps the Swamp to cast that one.
Okay.
And Gristlebrand hitting the bin.
Yeah, and this is a real nice one, because if he just has Reanimate to return it, he takes some damage. He doesn't have the extra mana. He's going to end up passing turn here after resolving that Entomb. That's a pretty interesting play there.
Yeah, so just Exhume next turn seems to be the line. So Haversat has this 1 draw step. Now, this is the kind of situation where the mana is tight, but I believe that Castagna is holding on to an Unmask.
Yeah, that one is free, so the mana not quite as much of a constraint. And Castagna here looks like he might have it rolled up with a turn 3 Gristlebrand after a discard effect.
Insectile Aberration flies over for 3 more points. Castagna to 11. Basic Plains pass.
All right. Bloodstained Mire the play and the draw. Unmasked is going to pitch one of these extra black cards. Thoughtseize there going away. We're going to be stripping the Force of Will like 99%. And then Haversat's going to need basically, I don't think he has an option here. If he has Brainstorm, it's the only way out. He needs to Brainstorm into Perfect. But Force of Will is the only card revealed. Gristlebrand's going to enter the battlefield this turn via that Exhume. And it's going to dominate combat on top of threatening to draw 7 cards.
Sometimes with this black-red Reanimator deck, the strength is that you reanimate Gristlebrand, frequently on turn 1, and because you play these Lotus Petals, these Dark Rituals, you're very capable of drawing cards with Gristlebrand and establishing a second threat the same turn. Do you think from 10 life there's an argument for Castagna to go for that here, or do you think he's going to sit tight with the Gristlebrand?
I think sitting tight with the Gristlebrand, mostly because you can, if it's going to be probably Source of Plowshares is the card that's going to be taking care of Gristlebrand, if anything takes care of Gristlebrand. Unlike some versions of the deck, some versions of Reanimator, you don't have Force of Will. You can't draw cards and then counter the next thing they play. You rely on discard effects. And with no cards in hand that can be hit with a discard spell, there's no real reason to draw 7 unless you're desperately trying to reanimate another creature. You're not really in any real rush. You're not under any pressure.
Yeah, and Castagna agrees. He'll sit tight, go back Haversat's way. Draw is Stoneforge Mystic. He'll cast that and go and find Batterskull, a little bit smaller than Gristlebrand.
Yeah, and while both have lifelink, one is flying and has, Yawgmoth's Bargain attached to it. So
I got a gripe with the design of Gristlebrand.
Oh, same. I thought it should have been banned like 5 years ago or something.
Oh, my gripe is much more petty and trivial.
Oh, that
I don't like that you don't have to skip your draw step when you control Gristlebrand.
You know what? That actually is a very good point.
Attack for 7 with Gristlebrand. Castagna to 17, Haversat to 13.
Yeah.
And that life's going right away. We'll draw 7 cards.
Yeah, and at this point, I think it's safe to draw 7. The pressure on the battlefield doesn't kill you. You've already gained the 7 life. And now Castagna is just looking for a way to put another monster onto the battlefield.
And here is 7 fresh cards. Not sure what the players are squabbling about. Seems like it may have been resolved, though.
Yeah, Castagna here looks like he has Entomb. Does he have another reanimation spell? More importantly, is that reanimation spell Reanimate? Because that's the only one that's a little bit dangerous here at 10 life,
yeah,
down to 9.
That one is tough. There goes Verdant Catacombs to 9. Castagna, even though the Gristlebrand is larger, you kind of like to see him set up Sire Insanity to make the Batter Skull go away.
Yeah, I don't mind that here. And, I mean, he has perfect information about Haversat's hand, so nothing really to worry about. Shields are down.
Ooh.
Elishnorn's a nice one.
This kind of does it, too, in Tomb for Elishnorn.
Yeah, it checks both of the creatures on the battlefield, so even if Haversat's able to deal with that Gristlebrand, the Elishnorn can invalidate any future threat that Haversat is able to play until he finds another answer for Elishnorn.
Full grip. Looks like, there is Exhume, so no life loss, bringing Elishnorn back. Stoneforge Mystic, Insectile Aberration, they are gone.
Yep, and Unmask here going to follow up, just basically winning on all metrics is Jonathan Castagna.
Yeah, I mean, you have to discard a hand side if he doesn't do that, right? It's perfect.
Sure.
Ponders the draw for Haversat, but there's really nothing a Delver deck can do from this battlefield position.
I mean, it have to be runner, right? Like, if he draws Karakas right now, he can Karakas bouncing the Gristlebrand. He'll take 4 from the Elishnorn next turn, but then he can Karakas bouncing the Elishnorn. So there is a chance. It is just very, very small. And playing that island for the turn may have locked him out unless he hits exactly Swords to Plowshares X2 and is able to cast them over the next 2 turns.
Yeah, it's a situation where he's pondering and keeping. He draws Brainstorm, and that island is a second blue source on the battlefield. He has Uncracked Floodstrand, but the Brainstorm's a lot worse if you have to use that to cast it. You kind of end up playing the island anyway. You're right, though. It's an opportunity cost to Karakas. He's in a really bad spot here. He's going to fetch that Floodstrand, though.
Yeah, I don't mind keeping the Brainstorm. I just like cracking the fetch line before casting the Brainstorm to give yourself a look at a fresh 3, because if you hit that Karakas off of that fresh 3, you actually have a shot to get back in this game. Castagna has chosen to tutor up 2 different legendary creatures. And now Jacob Haversat has a look at a Brainstorm, the top 3 cards. He needs exactly Swords to Plowshares X2 over the next 2 turns, or Path to Exile, or he's dead.
Well, it's 3-0, and he's going to pick him up. Jonathan Castagna with Rakdos Reanimator advances to 12-2 with 1 round to go.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be good enough to make it into